Hello and welcome back to Darkstorm Rising. Glad to see you again. This is going to be part 2 of the Carnifex videos that I've started. So yesterday we got him all positioned. I've taken the blue tack off, ready to mount on the base. Really pleased with the position actually. I'll give you a close look in a moment. Yesterday when I was doing the filming, I thought it was a little bit distant working on this table, so I'm going to go over to our painting table where I have a camera mounted fixed above the table, so it's a little bit clearer, a little bit better views. Today we'll be working with milliput, and then one of my little treasures is sphagnum moss. This stuff is absolutely amazing. You can just break chunks off, it makes absolutely brilliant rock formations. So we'll be working with some of that and combining the milliput together, and then we'll be putting a few pieces of interest in. So I'm looking to include rock, I'm looking to include wood, definitely some skulls on there, and I'm actually going to do a feature video on each of those aspects on how to paint them, as well as the base itself. So without further ado, to the table. Well, hello, and we find ourselves at the table. The first thing we're going to do is milliput and a load of it. So milliput, I don't know if you've worked with it before, very cheap, easy to access off eBay or your local art shop. Comes in 2 compartments, and essentially what you're going to do is you're going to mix like for like, equal parts, and that will go to form a yellow paste that's moldable. It actually does run very well if you make it wet with water. So it's very easy to reposition or smooth into cracks. In fact, actually it's very good for filling in gaps on miniatures, and it will harden to a very strong finish. So excellent choice of weapon. So to start with, it looks like a dog has been on the table. This dog's healthy diet. This one's struggling a bit with fat content really, but the two of them together will make us quite a nice modelling substance. So we'll put those back in the bag. If you don't put them in the bag and keep them nice and tight and sealed, it does go off. It does become a bit brittle, especially the yellow one. So please do look after them, because we don't use it all the time, and it needs to be in good nick for when we get there. So that's the milliput out of the way. I'll just spend a couple of minutes mashing this all together. I may actually add a little bit more, but I'll get it all mashed together and then we'll start doing some modelling on the base. Okay, so I have myself a nice dough ball sized piece of modelling clay. I think they've changed the colour of it slightly actually. Normally it goes yellow, and the second component is a bit more of a grey than a brown, so maybe they've updated their compound, I don't know. We'll see how it performs. Well, hopefully it'll all go off and be lovely. So that's our modelling clay. Things that we might want to use on it. So I've just been out in the garden, and I know that you might not be just doing tyranids, but pine cones, they're absolutely brilliant for scales. So what you can do is cut these guys out, stick them on your base. So if you're doing fantasy stuff, it can be dragon scales. If you're doing tyranids, it can be scales that have fallen to the ground during the combat. So simple pine cone, I've got loads in the back garden. Maybe I ought to box them up and ship them out on eBay. Also in the garden, in profuse quantities, I've got twigs, and I've broken some off into some nice random shapes. It's always nice to have a little bit of a point of interest, some sort of Y point on it and some little notches on. Now what I will do, and this sounds really, really sad, but we will actually paint these and paint the twigs to look like branches. And you wonder why I just don't leave them as they are, but hopefully you'll see a difference as we do paint them. And I will do an episode on that. I've got some skulls. There's loads of places you can get skulls from on the internet, whether that be from Games Workshop themselves, whether it be from people who have done resin casts and selling them on eBay. Absolutely loads of sources for those. I've also got, I think this is it Army Painter? I'm not sure if this is Army Painter or not. I think maybe. Yes, it is. So this is a box of barbed wire, always good for the battlefield. So that's nice there, and you can like wrap it around a pencil, coil it up nicely, and then apply a little bit of barbed wire to your battlefield. We'll definitely be having some of that. And then one of my other secret weapons is I have a box of blue slate. And because you've got so many different sizes and shapes of stone, this is absolutely brilliant for making one-off boulders here and there. You can get a bag of it for 7 or 8 quid, and you're talking about maybe £11 if you get a slightly bigger bag, but you're talking about like a 11-15 kilogram bag, and it's going to be all the slate you will ever use in your lifetime modelling. Similarly, from your local DIY stores, another thing I use a load of is coarse sand. Absolutely brilliant, because you get some PVA glue, and there's loads of different types of PVA glue as well. Here's just one example, just from an art shop. This one tends to be a little bit thinner. If you get something a bit thicker, I'll just nip over to the other side of the studio. Something more like the Everstake. This is thicker, but either of them are lovely and will adhere to the base. You then get your miniature on its base, dunk it in, slap the sand all over, let it soak in for a few seconds, and then just tap the base, shake off the excess, and that gives you a lovely covering that you can then base coat once it's had a chance to dry. PVA glue does take around about 12 to 18 hours to go off, so be patient with it, don't start painting it too early. As I've said in other videos, one of the things that we're a little bit lacking in our modelling world is patience, and sometimes we trash stuff inadvertently with our impatience. So what we'll do to start with is we will get a great big lump of the sphagnum moss. We'll put some of the milliput onto the base to start with, and we'll just... So what we were talking about yesterday in the video was the pose for the miniature. And what we said was that if we look at him head on, we can see that what he's doing is he's stepping over something. He's at a very slight incline, but his head is naturally leveled off to focus on the combat. So if I put him on his base normally, it looked like he was looking at the ground. He's found some, I don't know, he's seen a landmine ahead and he's trying to avoid it. But I don't want that. I want that he's on an incline, he's looking ahead, he's seen his victim, he knows where he's going in the battlefield, and he's going to come and get you. And he's going to come and mangle you with those mandibles. So that's what we're aiming for, is maybe even slightly inclined upwards. So he's maybe looking forwards and down. That might be quite interesting. So what we need to do is we need to think about that positioning as we do the base. So we want to, as I've said, we're looking at him looking down. So the front of the base is going to need to be elevated. So we'll do that automatically with this. We'll put a thinner layer at the back. So mashing it down, and if I look at the side profile, I haven't used all of the milliput yet, but you can already see that the profile is definitely trending up at the front. We'll get a bit more. Again, we'll lob it on the front, but we haven't even really got the elevation there yet, because what we're going to do now is we're going to break off some of this sphagnum moss. Okay. We'll see if we can create some nice, interesting... Oh, that's quite a nice shape that's just broken naturally there. So what we'll do is, as we're progressing with the model, we just gently pull it on to start with, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch how I'm creating that profile. So what I'm looking for is that he's uphill and face level. So that I want a very narrow slab at the back here where the bottom foot is, and at the front foot I want the big slab. So he's stepping up onto the big slab to get a view. So this slab will be that big slab. Which way round do I want it? Just thinking of how the profile is going to look when it's all finished. So I think we'll embed that, push some of the milliput up to the base to actually get a good grip on it as it sets, so that it doesn't ping off in the future. Okay, so that's a nice good grip on there, and let's have a look how the leg goes on again. So the leg, I need to get him central on the base, so that actually, if we look at where he is, that needs to come across a bit. So we'll do that, we'll push that across and out. remold the milli put around it, get that grip back on Okay. I'm just sorting out the autofocus a second. That's it, we're on. Beautiful. Okay, so we'll now re-examine the profile. Now we've pushed it over a little bit. And so there's the front of the base. Here's the miniature. It needs to be angled slightly, so the back end's going to go down and this front end's going to come up. So we just work that in. And if you lick your fingers, the milliput will not adhere to your fingers. Okay. Bit gross, I know, but I'm a gamer. I don't care. Right, okay, so now just push with the foot so I get him to the position I want him right. So we're slowly working on this position. I want him a bit more up and level. Okay, so we want a bit more up still. And just working the milliput constantly into the position I want it. This rock's actually going to give us a really good profile, actually, that elevated, jagged edge to it, to get this foot on properly. And just keep working the position. So I think that is pretty close now. So now we've got to do a rock for the back edge. For the other foot, and actually the piece that broke off here may actually be the piece I'm looking for, so we'll just pop that on and we'll give it a go. I've got plenty more milliput, so I'll get that moulded in, get all this grip back on the, just don't be thinking. There we go. Okay. So this is taking a little bit of time, but it's worth it. Oh, look at that, look, beautiful fit. Okay, that's where we need to be. Okay, if we look at the top where his feet are going, so we've got back. I think I'm just, no, I can get him on there, that's beautiful. So the next thing to do is to give that a little while to set, which I'm going to do. So we'll give that a couple of hours to set, because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at drilling his feet and drilling the sphagnum moss. And unless that's set, we're going to find that we have a bit of a problem. So I'll just make sure we've got a nice grip on the sphagnum moss. We'll get all those pieces tucked in. Try not to move it too much because we know the position is good. Just retest it. Retest that position, make sure it's in the right place, and that's looking pretty sexy. So we'll be back in a few hours when this is settled. So it took us around about 15 minutes in the last section in real time to get the angles all set and right. So this guy sits on there and looks pretty ferocious and proud. Hopefully I've edited that time down a little bit so that you don't have to sit and watch it, but just to give you an idea of the sort of time period that it takes to get this sort of thing put together. The next piece that we're going to do is actually try and get him to attach to here with pins. The magic will all be done by the magic of paper clips, but we need to make some holes in the creature first and in the base. There are many companies who make these pin vices and you just attach a drill bit, and there are companies that even make little packets of the drills themselves. This particular one's by Army Painter. All you need to do if you haven't got a local hobby shop or can't get access to something like this. I mean, access nowadays is so easy. I mean, the power of the internet is wonderful. So you can order some online, or you can just nip down to your local B&Q, take a paper clip with you, and just make sure that you get a drill piece that fits the paper clip. We'll be locking them in place with super glue, and really now we just need to drill the hole. I'm going to be really lazy, and I'm going to use a drill. So I'll just hook up the drill bit and we'll put a hole in him in a second. Now, just as a word of warning, when you're using these type of drills, they are very high revolution, and so as you drill into the plastic, they do melt the plastic if you've got any sustained contact. So if you're doing any fine work like gun barrels, that type of thing, it's probably best that you do it with the pin vise rather than with a drill. But I'm not doing anything delicate with this, so this should be literally just drilling the holes and so you can see on the tip there, it has actually melted the plastic onto the tip. Just peel that off, ready for the next one. Exactly the same again, and it's made quite big holes in there, but that's not a problem, because what we'll do is we'll get a tiny little bit of green stuff. Let me just grab that now. There we go. I'll quickly mix them up. Okay, so I've made the green stuff. Now, making the slightly oversized holes isn't a big deal. So the next thing we do is we grab our super glue. We whack a load of super glue into those holes and on the bottom of the hoof. Plenty of super glue on there. And then what we're going to do is cut the paper clip to a decent length. I actually do save a pair of cutters just for cutting paper clips because they do damage the tips of your blade, to be honest. Okay, so we've got a couple of pins there, and then we'll get some of the super glue. Sorry, we'll get some of the green stuff, and we will put the green stuff in a blob on the hoof, and then we will get the pin, and we will put a layering of super glue on the pin. Good blob, and trying not to glue anything to yourself, we will then ram the paper clip into the hole we've created. Okay, the green stuff holding it in place. Do the same on the other hoof. Now this blob is going to serve a couple of purposes. One thing it's going to do is obviously hold the paper clip and give us a very firm base once the pin is in place. But the other thing it's going to do is it's going to make a seal with the actual base itself, so that when we actually do, there we go, that's in. So that when we do actually put it in place, it won't be that there's any gaps underneath. The green stuff will have actually compressed down and closed those gaps for us. So we've now got to just get an idea of where we want him and drill a hole. So I want that hoof definitely around about there. So okay. And that means the other hoof wants to be about here. Just check those out for the positioning. So if we pop that one in first and see how close we are with our match. Oh, we're miles away. Okay, so I want to be a little bit higher up the model, at the base. Now the good thing about this stuff is that any of these mistakes that we make can be easily covered up before we actually commit to final fixation. But that is looking perfect. So we shall whack a great big blob of super glue into the areas that we've just created. And we shall also whack a load of super glue on the base of the model itself. So we're just popping a load of super glue all over those pins and the green stuff. And then we will introduce the model onto those holes that we created. It's a little bit hard just to see around the camera. And then we push down firmly to lock him in place. Okay. So his hooves are in a really good contact with the base. Now there's a little bit of an issue going on this side, but we have some spare green stuff. So what we'll do is we will put the green stuff roughly where I want it, so it's like just a big blob stuck on there at the moment, and then we'll grab our modelling tools that we were using earlier, exactly the same tool in fact, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to push some of it into the hole to get rid of the hole altogether, but I'm also making downward motions to mimic the actual look of the sphagnum moss, so that it will blend in, and once we get the black paint on it, you'll never know that this is green stuff. It'll just be part of the sphagnum moss, or as it will be at the time, rocky outcrop. And just under that hoof we'll just tidy up as well. And it is important to keep your tool that you're using wet, so that as you are pressing, it doesn't cause you a problem and stick to it and then peel off the green stuff. So we've got him on his base, he's stepping up onto the rock, he's balancing himself with his claws, he's looking angry and mean. And then the next step we need to do is think about applying some PVA glue. So I'll just tidy my desk up, and by the power of video we'll be back in a second. So our next step is going to be a serious dose of PVA glue. I've prepared a few little pieces that I've sized up on the model earlier to see where they fit. So these is just literally a twig from the garden and a couple of the slate pieces that I found in my tray. So we'll get a nice big tray full of PVA glue and a medium-ish sized brush, but one with a reasonable point on it. I'm just digging through my brushes now to see what I fancy. That'll do me. So I've gone for a size 10, nice big brush, quite a big model. So what we'll do is we'll get a big dollop of the PVA. And if you make any mistakes and you don't want it somewhere, literally just wipe it off. Wipe your fingers on cloth. I always keep some spare kitchen roll just underneath my desk for such emergencies. And now it is literally working my way around the model, applying the PVA to the areas I want it, leaving the rocks free, and just blobbing it around. A reasonable-ish size layer, because it's going to have to stick stones down. Plus I'm also going to put a layer of sand and gravel on shortly, so I don't want any of that moving around once it's in place. Just trying not to spill over the edge of the base and just moving it around. Now once we've got all this decorated up, this is going to take, oh, I don't know, a good 12-18 hours to set. So once we've got the base done, I won't be base coating it for what, maybe a couple of days. But that's good, because I'm actually at work very shortly for a couple of days, so it will give it a good couple of days to harden off, and then I can look at getting the next video out. And in the meantime, this will have hardened off, and we won't be making a mess when we come back to it. So literally just blobbing everywhere. Doesn't need to be quite as dense under there, and you'll see why once I actually apply the textures that I'm going to. But I think a lot of videos tend to show you the painting section, but not a lot of the actual graph that goes into getting to the painting section. And you sort of sometimes left a little bit wondering, well, how did they manage that? How did that get there then? And so that's why I'm doing these videos, and I hope, you know, it gives you a bit of a feel of a bit more depth as to what goes on behind the scenes and gives you some inspiration. So the PVA I will put back into the pot in a little while. So I've got a very large stone here, which I'm going to drape across the back, and then I'm going to run alongside it the log. And if you make a little bit of mess with the PVA, it doesn't matter too much, don't worry about that, because we're going to paint it all later. There we go. And then on the front here, in the little groove, that there's a little valley, I'm just going to drop that one into there, let it settle. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, and just a little bit of PVA on the edge here. And now my secret weapon, as I'll just move the model out of the way, is an old ice cream tub full of sharp sand. And now literally what I'm going to do is plonk him in. I'll grab a handful first so that I'm not struggling. Plonk him in. Now also in my toolkit, I happen to have some spoons. So I can just flick it on the model and not make it look quite so much hard work. Okay. Now I would normally leave it to settle for a few minutes, because the bigger stones will move around, because they won't have had a chance to sink into the glue yet. Okay. So I'll dust off properly later. Just gently putting the sand back on the side there. And what I will do is probably, once this is set, I'll probably go back and do a little bit more of a dusting of sand in one or two places. The glue is moving a little bit more than I would like it to, so I'll just flatten that down with my thumb, reposition those. Okay, we'll just get a little bit more sand on there, just 1 second. Okay. Now if it is that you want rocks and stones on there from out of the sand, it's probably better to pick those up at the beginning. But I know I'm going to be putting a lot of plant life on here towards the end, and so I'm not too worried about that. But that's looking pretty groovy. I will, once it's dried, we'll get some of the razor wire from Army Painter and just literally twist it around a few times around in circles, just making it look a bit like a curled up piece of razor wire. Pull it out a little bit, and then that will go on the model somewhere. I'll super glue that in place, And that is the basing done. It's now just sitting and waiting for that to dry. Like I say, that's going to be a good 18 hours. So I'll leave that to one side. What I tend to do is I tend to rotate through the models. So I've got some in preparation, I've got some in drying phase, so that I'm not sat waiting for anything all the time. There's always something on the go. So that's another nice little tip there. Sometimes you can get a little bit focused and end up concentrating on a single model, but that's us done for this section. Well, we've got our little Carnifex all put together. I think it's in a pretty dynamic, exciting pose. I hope you enjoyed all the work we did putting that together, all the little extras ready for painting and doing a few extra techniques. If you did, please do like and subscribe, really help grows the channel. And are we painting yet? Still not yet, but it's coming very soon, I promise you. I'll catch you in the next one, and hopefully we'll get on to some painting very shortly. See you soon, guys.